Modern medicine likes to tell a clean story. Ancient ignorance, then the Renaissance, then science finally wakes up. But that story skips something uncomfortable, because centuries before the Renaissance, two physicians in the Islamic world corrected some of the most dangerous medical errors in history, and the world wasn't ready to listen. For over 1,000 years, medicine obeyed authority. If Galen said it, it was repeated. If it was written in an ancient book, it was treated as truth. And one of those truths controlled life and death. Doctors believed blood passed directly through invisible pores in the wall of the heart. No one had ever seen these pores. No one could prove they existed, but everyone believed in them. That error ruled medicine for generations. The first man to seriously challenge the way medicine was practiced wasn't in Renaissance Europe. He lived in 12th-century Al-Andalus. His name was Ibn Zuhr, known in Europe as Avenzoar. Ibn Zuhr was born in Seville into a family of physicians, but he quickly realized something was wrong with how doctors worked. Medicine had become theoretical. Physicians argued over texts instead of observing patients. Treatment was based on reputation, not results. Ibn Zuhr refused to practice that way. He believed medicine had to be proven on the body itself. Observation mattered more than reputation. Evidence mattered more than tradition. While other doctors debated, Ibn Zuhr watched symptoms carefully. He described diseases of the lungs, heart, and digestive system with a precision no one before him had achieved. He separated illnesses that earlier physicians had confused for centuries. He emphasized diet, hygiene, environment, and prevention, ideas that closely resemble modern clinical thinking. But his most shocking contribution came when he faced surgery. At a time when surgery was extremely dangerous, Ibn Zuhr refused to experiment on humans first. Instead, he tested procedures on animals to understand the risks. He famously described performing a tracheotomy on a goat to confirm that the operation could be survived. This wasn't cruelty, it was caution, a controlled experiment, a prototype. That single act places Ibn Zuhr centuries ahead of his time. This was experimental medicine, long before laboratories, long before clinical trials, long before modern ethics committees. His major work, Kitab al-Taysir, became one of the most influential medical texts of the medieval world. After being translated into Latin, it was taught in European universities for generations. Yet his name slowly faded. The method survived, the credit did not. But even Ibn Zuhr did not confront the most dangerous medical lie of all. That took another man, another century, and a direct challenge to Galen himself. That man was Ibn al-Nafis. 13th-century Cairo was home to hospitals, medical schools, and trained physicians. But one belief still ruled them all: the idea that blood passed through invisible pores in the heart wall. Ibn al-Nafis examined anatomy carefully and rejected it outright. He wrote something revolutionary for his time. The wall between the right and left sides of the heart is solid. There are no pores. So how does blood move? His answer changed medicine forever. Blood travels from the right side of the heart to the lungs. There, it mixes with air. Then it returns to the left side of the heart before being distributed to the body. This is pulmonary circulation. Clear, accurate, correct. Written centuries before it became accepted elsewhere. And yet there was no medical revolution, no collapse of old doctrine, no immediate rewriting of textbooks. Why? Because being right doesn't defeat authority. Institutions do. Ibn al-Nafis wrote in a world without printing presses, without global academic networks, without standardized curricula. His manuscripts circulated quietly among scholars. They survived, but they did not dominate. When Europe later discovered circulation, the idea was celebrated as new. The correction was praised. But the earlier voice that had already spoken the truth was largely forgotten. The knowledge lived on. The name disappeared. This is the pattern history rarely admits. Medicine did not suddenly become scientific in the Renaissance. It was already becoming scientific centuries earlier. Ibn Zuhr practiced experimental evidence-based medicine when Europe still relied on authority. Ibn al-Nafis corrected a fatal anatomical error when no one else dared to challenge it. They weren't ignored because they were wrong. They were ignored because they were early. History doesn't always reward truth. It rewards timing, power, and distribution. And these two physicians had truth long before the world was ready to hear it. Modern science loves to tell us that humanity slowly guessed the size of the Earth, that it took telescopes, satellites, and modern instruments to understand our planet. But nearly 1,000 years ago, one man measured the Earth with nothing more than mathematics, observation, and a mountain. And he got it almost exactly right. His name was Al-Biruni. At a time when much of the world still argued about the shape of the Earth, Al-Biruni wasn't debating philosophy. He was doing calculations. Born in 973 in Central Asia, Al-Biruni lived during the height of the Islamic scientific tradition. He was a polymath in the truest sense. Astronomy, mathematics, physics, geography, geology, anthropology, and history all fell within his reach. But what made him dangerous to outdated thinking was not his intelligence. It was his method. Al-Biruni believed nature could be measured, not guessed, not inherited from ancient authority, measured. During the rule of the Ghaznavid Empire, while serving under Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Al-Biruni gained access to regions and landscapes few scholars ever saw. And instead of treating conquest as spectacle, he treated it as opportunity. Opportunity to observe the Earth itself. Here was the problem he saw clearly. Earlier civilizations had estimated the Earth's size using indirect reasoning, travel distances, or inherited figures. Some were close, others were wildly wrong, but no one had proven it with geometry and observation combined. Al-Biruni decided to fix that. He chose a mountain. First, he calculated the height of the mountain using trigonometry, measuring angles from 2 points on the plane below. No climbing required. Just math. Then he climbed to the top. From there, he measured the angle between the horizon and the line of sight, a tiny dip so small most people wouldn't even notice it. Using that single angle, combined with the mountain's height, he calculated the radius of the Earth. No ships, no global travel, no satellites, just geometry. And his result? A value astonishingly close to modern measurements, off by only a small margin, using units and tools available nearly a millennium ago. This wasn't luck. It was controlled reasoning, experimental design, and mathematical precision. Al-Biruni didn't stop there. He argued clearly that the Earth rotates on its axis, and that this rotation explains the apparent movement of the stars, long before such ideas were accepted elsewhere. He treated astronomy as a physical science, not a theological battlefield. He studied tides and linked them to the moon. He analyzed minerals and densities. He compared calendars, cultures, and religions with an objectivity that modern scholars still admire. And perhaps most striking of all, he insisted that scientific truth does not belong to any one civilization. While living in India, Al-Biruni learned Sanskrit and studied Indian science directly. He wrote detailed accounts of Indian mathematics, astronomy, and culture without mockery or distortion. He compared systems instead of dismissing them. This was comparative science, centuries before anthropology existed. So why isn't his name as famous as the scientists who came much later? Because being correct does not guarantee recognition. Al-Biruni's work circulated in scholarly circles, but the world he lived in lacked printing presses, global institutions, and standardized education systems. His ideas survived, but quietly. When later generations measured the Earth again, they acted as if the problem had only just been solved. The math was repeated. The result was confirmed, but the original voice was rarely mentioned. This is what it means to be right too early. Al-Biruni did not need modern tools. He needed clarity. He proved that the Earth could be measured with logic alone. That observation beats speculation, and that nature obeys laws whether humanity is ready to understand them or not. The Earth didn't change size over the centuries. Only our willingness to listen did. Al-Biruni measured the planet when the world wasn't ready to accept how precise science could be. And history quietly moved on, standing on calculations it never properly acknowledged.